it was one of those situations where I had messaged this guy who was following me, who had like just randomly a second pre-order for the console on Amazon. And I was like, I am not above exchanging insider information with the team that you like for inside info on the next PlayStation 5 drop. And his response was, well, I don't know when the next drop is coming, but I do have a second pre-order that I can just redirect to you. Just send me 500. It was like $560 or something like that. He's like, just Venmo me the money and send me your address. And I was like, okay, cool.
Like, that worked out very well for you. That could have gone poorly.
I essentially was the 5-year-old that saw a van pull up next to him and was offered candy and said, yeah, I'll take candy. I'd love it.
Oh man. All right. Cue the intro.
Do you want to form an alliance with me?
Absolutely, I do.
Welcome in to the Alliance new video series here. I'm Spenser Davis with Saturday Road. I'm here with Derek Peterson of Saturday Out West. We're going to talk about the ACC, the Pac-12, and occasionally we'll talk about the Big Ten when they're relevant. You know, we'll see how that goes. But today, you know, we're going to start things off talking not about PlayStation 5, but about a couple up and coming programs, a couple programs that took that had coaching changes this offseason. USC and Miami, two programs that at their ceiling can absolutely win a national championship, but have not been anywhere close to that over the last 15 years or so. And we're just going to talk about the how things are going with these rebuilds, and where we think these programs are headed, and maybe debate which one will make the turnaround more quickly. Derek, would you like to make the case for USC?
Yeah, I can certainly make the case for USC. I don't think we ever need to talk about the Big Ten again, unless Dustin gets mad at us. I don't think we need to talk about the Big Ten anymore. Did you watch? This is completely off topic, and I've derailed us already. Was it the Wisconsin and someone else, maybe Penn State? There was like 31 combined points in the first half of a Division I college basketball game the other day. Did you see this?
I did not, no.
Okay, well, your eyes are lucky. USC. So I have in my notes, they were 10th in the talent composite last year, put together by 247 Sports, 10th nationally. They won 4 games. So, like, there's a little bit of, well, your talent can't be that good if you only won 4 games. But there's also an element, I mean, they got 46 of their 85 scholarship players were blue chip recruits. There's a lot of talent on the USC roster. And they had coaching uncertainty all season. I mean, if you're going to fire a head coach 2 games into the season, you shouldn't fire the head coach after the previous season.
Yep.
You had your mind made up at that point. I think you could chalk up maybe 1 or 2 losses to just all of the uncertainty that was with the head coach. But, like, there is an element of maybe the talent on this team was a little overrated on the recruiting trail. Maybe it just hasn't clicked, some of that stuff. But I do think that this is a really talented roster. Well, let me rephrase. I think this is a more talented roster that Lincoln Riley has inherited than some people are giving them credit for. And I think Lincoln Riley, despite what Oklahoma fans say on Twitter, is still a pretty good coach. He's probably a top 10 coach in the country. So you look at, I mean, the offense is the big thing, right? You look at the potential starters on offense. They're going to have, I've got in my notes here, they're going to have the Pac-12's leader in scrimmage yards last year, Travis Dye, running back, as a potential starter, or 5-star Raleek Brown plays a ton. They've also got Austin Jones from Stanford. They've got former 4-star Brendan Rice at wide receiver, former 4-star Mario Williams at wide receiver, former 4-star CJ Williams at wide receiver. They bring back Taj Washington from last year, who had 602 receiving yards. They bring back Gary Bryant from last year, who had 579 receiving yards and 7 scores, who was also a former top 100 pick or a top 100 recruit. They have just a ridiculous amount of talent on the offensive side of the ball.
What about the offensive line? Well,
see, that's the thing that everybody points to, and specifically
for a reason.
The really loud. So everything that I saw on social media is that this offensive line is trash. No quarterback should want to play with him. Caleb Williams is a dummy for basically thinking that he can stay healthy behind this offensive line. They ranked 9th last year in sack rate allowed. They're like, I understand that numbers can lie. I get that. We see it all the time. But numbers as good as some of USC's offensive line metrics are, they don't lie that much. They gave up a sack rate of 3.7% last year on 533 passing snaps tracked by PFF. They gave up 8 sacks. The offensive line was responsible for 8 sacks. Now this is PFF's tracking, so it's hard to really like figure out the nitty gritty of where they got this, but 8 sacks and 533 pass snaps is pretty good. They returned 5 of their top 7 offensive linemen, and they had, I believe, 5 guys in the top 13 for qualified offensive lineman PFF grade.
Look, I mean, that all sounds well and good. I think the sack rate is an interesting number, but at the same time, like how much, and I have not watched the tape, so I'm just throwing this out there, but like how many of those are RPOs where like you're not really going to get sacked, right? Like if it's a true 5-7 step drop, there's a lot better chance of you actually getting sacked than some of what USC was probably running last year, right? And also, I mean, what was the pressure rate allowed? I mean, those kind of stats matter for. What about the running game? I mean, that kind of there's more to how good the offensive line projects as than just the sack rate.
Well, so if you look at some of their rushing numbers and some of the stuff that is geared more towards dissecting offensive line credit versus running back credit for rushing. If you look at some of those metrics, they are average to good. They were average to decent last year. Like I'm talking like mid-30s, mid-40s national ranking. So some of that stuff, it's not anything that is like a glaring red flag. And then they've got talent coming back. And I think part of it, they did give up a good deal of pressures looking at PFF's tracking data. And that's something, I mean, they won 4 games. Like they got to improve. Like we're not talking about this is a college football playoff team ready-made right now. They got to show improvement this year. This is a big offseason for them. But if you're talking about what they have coming back and the stuff that's going to be available to Lincoln Riley, they have the makings of a good foundation on offense because they have what would we call Caleb Williams, a top 15 returning quarterback in the country?
I think that's fair.
I've seen people put him in the top 5. I don't know if I'd put him in the top 5. He's certainly a huge transfer. It's a big deal. At top 15 is fair. He's, there's some stuff from last year. He's got to work on the deep ball a little bit more. But I think too, he has legitimate improbability that will help the offensive line. And then you add in Travis Dye, who is a significant threat in the receiving department. And you have Raleek Brown, who can do a bunch of different roles for them. I think that they can, if they go into the season still worried about the offensive line or kind of questioning the offensive line, I think with what they have at the skill positions, they can kind of help. The big thing with them is the defensive line. I mean, everybody is completely justified in questioning what's going on with the defensive line. Their run defense numbers last year were really bad. They were not a havoc producing team. They were 119th in havoc rate, I believe. With Drake Jackson leaving, they just don't have a guy that is really going to threaten you on the outside. They were really hoping that Corey Foreman was going to be that guy. I think, there's a question as to whether he'll play as a down defensive lineman with his hand in the dirt or as more of a stand-up outside edge rusher. Either way, I think they're banking on improvement from him this offseason. I mean, he was a top 10 recruit out of the 21 class, so he should show improvement. But like the defensive line is gonna decide what the ceiling is, I think, for their team and more their defensive front. I think they're gonna be a high floor team because of all of the talent that they have added to the offense, specifically at the skill position, and then Caleb Williams coming in. But like that defensive line is going to determine how high the ceiling is. I saw a bunch of people whenever Caleb Williams committed that said, well, college football playoff, they're a top 10 team. I think you should stop short at the college football playoff. Like Utah's still the team to beat in the Pac-12 South. You got to get past Utah first. And then there's Oregon if you make it to the Pac-12 title game. But I still think USC, if the question is stock up versus stock down, or I guess who would you bet on between these two teams, USC and Miami? I'd probably take USC because I feel like the combination of quarterback play and skill talent is just better than what Miami has.
Well, let me make the case for Miami then, because I disagree with that. So Caleb Williams is certainly a high-profile name, but Miami has a guy named Tyler Van Dyke who was just as good as Caleb Williams, if not better. As a freshman last year, came in, inherited an offense that was a run-first offense with Derek King. Derek King goes down, and Rhett Lashley, the offensive coordinator there, who is now the head coach at SMU, completely retooled this offense around Tyler Van Dyke and his strengths, and it worked very well. He threw for 300 yards and 3 touchdowns or more in each of his final 6 games. I believe Miami went 4-2 or 5-1 over that stretch, beat a couple ranked teams. They beat Pitt, they beat NC State. They were a very, very good offense. I mean, they turned Charleston Rambo, who was sort of an afterthought at Oklahoma, and Charleston Rambo put up statistically the best receiving season in the history of Miami football. Now, Charleston Rambo's gone, and receiver is a big question mark at Miami this year, but Jalen Knighton is back, running back, former blue chip guy that's going to be, really, really good. Maybe one of the best running backs in the ACC next year. And they have Will Mallory at tight end, who, is maybe going to be the best tight end in the ACC next season. So I'm not worried about the offensive skill talent at all. Their offensive line got beat up a little bit last year, but they're returning 109 career starts on the offensive line. Most of that is between 3 guys, but their left tackle Zion Nelson's coming back, and they've got a couple other key returners. They do have a couple guys that are going to be battling injuries through spring, but that offensive line, plus if they can bring in a transfer guy, I'm not worried about Miami's offense at all. The only thing would be the receiving core is going to be a bit unproven, right? I mean, they got Frank Ladson in from Clemson as a transfer commitment this offseason. Maybe they try to add 1 or 2 more guys. But for the most part, it's a young team. It's a young skill position group outside of Knighton and Mallory, who are more experienced. But I mean, this offense, and then, I haven't even mentioned it yet. On Sunday, they bring in Josh Gaddis, one of the best young offensive coordinators in the country from Michigan, who routinely was putting up 6 yards of play at Michigan, despite not having, nearly as dynamic of quarterback. I mean, Tyler Van Dyke is maybe going to start to get some hype this offseason. That's a guy who could end up in New York City at the Heisman Trophy ceremony at the end of the year if Miami's season goes the way that a lot of people think it will.
I feel like he's already getting hype. I'm already hearing about this dude as like one of the top 5 quarterbacks in the country.
Again, like you'd have to line him up. Top 5 is what it is, but I would put him right up there with Caleb Williams, considering what he did, as a freshman, and beat those ranked teams, even in losses, was producing really well and was giving Miami a chance to win those games. I mean, it was just really impressive to see how he can sling it. And look, Rhett Lashley did a great job. I don't see Josh Gaddis as a downgrade at all. I certainly think that from an overall institutional standpoint, Mario Cristobal is an upgrade over what Manny Diaz was doing. And that stuff can trickle down and start to matter even on the offensive side of the ball. So I don't know, man. Like I think Miami might win. I need to look at it more this offseason. We're still early here. We're not even to spring ball yet. But to me, they are definitely a contender to win their division next season. And I think you could see them I could easily see them in the Orange Bowl as soon as next season.
Okay, you are taking over as head coach of a pretty good college football team that has a chance to go make it to its conference championship game, and you have your pick of Tyler Van Dyke or Caleb Williams. Who are you taking among those 2 players?
Well, I need, like, what does the rest of my offense look like?
It's a good offense.
Okay.
No,
if I'm like,
we don't need to add logic. We don't need to add logic to this conversation. Just blindly pick one or the other.
I think that Caleb Williams' ceiling is higher, so I would probably go Caleb Williams. However, from just a baseline production perspective, Caleb Williams made some mistakes last season in Oklahoma that he did not get punished for, especially in that Texas game. That comeback is going to be, legendary in that rivalry forever. He got lucky a few times there. I think everyone would agree with that, with throwing some passes that could have been picked off. And he did that in other games last season too. Tyler Van Dyke is more careful with the ball, but I think that, Caleb Williams, with what he can do athletically, it does give you a higher ceiling.
Yeah, Caleb Williams is one of those guys that's going to take those chances. He's just going to look at his receiver downfield and say, screw it, I'm going to throw it, see what happens.
Yeah.
Because he's got that kind of confidence in some of those guys.
Mario's down there somewhere.
Yeah. Some of those guys are going to be different, obviously. But I think there is an element of, like, in the Pac-12 versus the rest of the ACC, like, do you expect Clemson to bounce back in a big way? Do you expect North Carolina to be better? Do you expect Wake Forest to stay with what they've got at the quarterback position? Like, do you think that that's going to be a tough conference for them?
Not really. And I mean, here's the thing. They're in a pretty easy division, right? Like they don't have to play, like they don't have to beat Clemson in order to make the conference title game. They're in the Coastal, right? Like Pitt is their main competition next season.
The ACC
Virginia. Yeah, Virginia Tech is there. I think they made a pretty good hire with Brent Pry. Virginia, Brennan Armstrong's coming back. They could put up 55 any given week, but they could also give up 70, right? North Carolina, I think, is probably going to be about what they were this year, which, you lose Sam Howell. If you can go to a bowl again, that's probably pretty good. And then Georgia Tech and Duke are going to be lucky to win a conference game outside of when they face each other. So it's really, I think Pitt, they brought in another USC guy, right? Keaton Slovis is going to be Pitt's quarterback. And they've got a couple other really good transfers. They got a receiver from Akron that's going to be really good. I think that is probably the ACC Coastal Championship game for what for all intents and purposes, that Pitt-Miami game. The other side of the conference is much tougher, right? Like Clemson is probably going to win 10 games again. Florida State should be a lot better. Louisville gets Malik Cunningham back. Wake Forest still has Sam Hartman. NC State still has Devin Leary. Like if I was picking a conference title game right now, I would pick Miami versus NC State.
And so in that way, I think as we talked this out, you've kind of convinced me. I think in that way, Miami is probably the better upside play this particular season.
Yeah.
Because if we're picking like who's going to the conference title game, I would still pick Utah in the Pac-12 South to make it to the conference title game, just because of everything that they have returning and sort of the stability factor there. So I guess in that way, Miami is the better upside play right now. But I do think long-term USC is going to return to where they want to return to. My question with Miami is what the heck happened with their coordinators?
Well, I mean, it took them a while, but they hit home runs, right? Like, I mean, I think for a while, Miami, at least on the offensive side of the ball, wanted to hold off to see if they could get Joe Brady. Joe Brady, of course, ends up sticking with the NFL. I think he took the quarterback job with the Bills, if I'm not mistaken. Pretty clear he just didn't want to be a college head coach again, or a college coordinator again. And then, the defensive side of the ball, I think they made a good hire, right? I mean, Kevin Steele is a little older. I think this is a young recruiting, and being an assistant coach is for the most part a young man's game. But Kevin Steele could easily be the head coach at Tennessee right now if things had broken differently there. So that, and he had a great run as Auburn's defensive coordinator a few years ago. That seems like a pretty good hire to me for a program that's trying to stabilize.
You want to transition to hoops real fast?
Yeah. I think we should talk basketball.
Yeah, because I have a burning question that
okay.
has just been eating me up. What has happened to North Carolina? It's not like a precipitous drop, but I think they're like 18-10 over the last 2 seasons in conference play. Like, and they just got rocked by Duke. Like, what's going on with North Carolina basketball?
Yeah, I mean, they just went on like a little 4-game winning streak before they lost to Duke by 20. But the 2 games before that, they got smoked, right? So like their last 3 losses have been just blowouts. And I mean, this Hubert Davis thing is just not really working. I mean, frankly, this roster is way too talented to be struggling this much. I mean, Caleb Love had a horrific game against Duke, but he's been good for most of this season. Brady Manick is balling out right now in his 5th year. It's great to see. I do think they missed Dawson Garcia, who's back home in Minnesota dealing with a family matter. But listen, I mean, recruiting is a big issue right now. I mean, if you look at the 2022 class, North Carolina is bringing in, pretty much 4-year guys, and Duke has 4 one-and-dones coming in next year. So this gap is not going to get narrower. I mean, even with John Shire coming in, they're recruiting as well as they ever have under K. And I don't know, man, like this is the first time I believe that North Carolina has gone back-to-back recruiting classes without any McDonald's All-Americans, which is crazy. And I don't know, like it doesn't seem like it's going to rebound.
So what is their? I don't have their record in front of me. What is their record right now? I mean, they're like 8-4 in conference play, 16.
Yeah, they're 16-7 overall. Yeah, 8-4 in conference play. But I mean, they've only won 2 road games in this calendar year. They beat Boston College on January 2nd, and they beat Louisville in overtime last week. And there was a lot of controversy with that, right? So like they're not performing well on the road. They're getting blown out by tournament teams. Got blown out by Duke, blown out by Wake Forest, blown out by Miami. Those are the only 3 surefire tournament teams in the ACC. And Notre Dame would be the 5th team, and they lost to them too. That game was close, but they lost. So they got blown out by Kentucky in December. They got blown out by Tennessee. They got blown out by Purdue. It's every time this team faces somebody that's good, it doesn't go well, right? Like their best win this year, according to KenPom, is a home game against Virginia Tech. They won by 10, and Virginia Tech is 47th in KenPom. Actually, take it back. They beat Michigan, who's currently 42nd in KenPom at home.
They're trending the wrong way.
And yeah, Michigan's going the wrong way. Big Ten update. Michigan's not as good as we thought.
Dang it. We talked about the Big Ten.
Their 3rd best win this year, according to KenPom, is Furman. It's not good.
Okay, so here's my question. This is what I wanted to get to. So, like, if you're 16-7, so Miami is also 16-7. If you're 16-7, you're not getting fired at Miami. There are like 5, 6, 7, 8, I don't know how many programs in the country, college basketball programs, where you go 16-7 and they're like people talking about, well, what is it time to make a change? Like, what are they doing here? Like, if this stuff continues, the situation as you laid out, where they're getting smacked around by the good teams on their schedule. If this continues through the rest of the season, like how quick is the hook at North Carolina?
I think he's going to get a second year, if only because, this was, Hubert Davis was, I don't want to say handpicked by Roy Williams, but certainly signed off on by Roy Williams. They didn't even do a real coaching search, right? I mean, they just kind of named Hubert the guy. And if North Carolina, makes a tournament as like a 10 seed or just misses the tournament in year 1 with a couple transfers coming in, I think he will get a second season, even if they get swept by Duke. I mean, they're probably going to get blown out by them in Cameron here on March 5th. But man, the year 2 leash is going to be short. Like if he gets a second year, I think he starts next season on the hot seat, because again, this roster is too good. Like RJ Davis is a good player. Leaky Black is one of the best perimeter defenders in the ACC. You should be able to build a roster that is one of the 3 or 4 best teams in the ACC. And right now they're probably 5th. I mean, they've lost to the other 4, right? Notre Dame, Miami, Wake Forest, and Duke. They're 0-4 against those teams. They're going to have a shot here against Duke again, but man, it's got to be better. This roster's too talented. I mean, when they got blown out by Wake Forest, Hubert Davis at the press conference said they were just, much more talented than us. Well, the guys he's talking about are Alondis Williams, who last year was a bench player at Oklahoma, and Jake LaRavia, who was at Indiana State last year. Like, it's not like Wake Forest is rolling out 5 stars, right? And they lost by 22 in Winston-Salem. It's crazy. North Carolina doesn't lose to Wake Forest like that. So, they just got to play better. They have to defend better. I mean, their offense has been pretty good this year, but they have to defend better. They have to have more effort. And go ahead.
I was just going to say that as a lifelong North Carolina fan, not really actually, I have put away my UNC colored Jordans just in shame. I just can't wear them anymore. I'm ashamed. to wear UNC colors, which I feel
I'm
like you're wearing UNC colors right now, and
Well,
I'm ashamed for you.
It's not a UNC shirt. It's shout out Sporting KC here in Kansas City. But no, I mean, Ken Palm has them losing a 1-point game to Clemson on the road on Tuesday night. If that happens, my goodness, that's not going to be good. Now, after that, they get Florida State, who's just on an absolute horror show right now at home next Saturday. That should be a win. Then they get Pitt at home. Again, should be a win. But so maybe they'll win their next 3 and they'll be looking like a tournament team again. But my gosh, I mean, the season has not met expectations and the future does not look too much better.
I say all that in jest. I like North Carolina. They just got to get better. So I can bring out the UNC colors again. I think that's it. Spencer, I'm happy to be doing this with you. It was a blast. We've got the same kind of catchy name as the Real World Alliance. I think the value is a little bit better so far. I think we've done more with it than the actual Alliance has.
I would like to think so. Well, I mean, we'll see if there's more to come with that. Yeah, I think we did well.
I'm very excited to watch a Rutgers Colorado football game in the future. I can't wait for that non-conference. That's going to be great. So,
I mean, they've got to get these schedules out, right? I mean, what are we doing here?
Yeah, it sounds like they might go to 8 in the Big Ten and potentially go back to 8 in the Pac-12 if that happens. There we go with more Big Ten talk. I think we got to
listen. Any scenario that gets us more Power 5 football games against each other, non-conference in September, do what you got to do. Sounds great.
I want more Oregon, Ohio State like games. That was fun.
Yep, that was a lot of fun.
Okay, that's it. Cool.
I wonder what